After we have finished the financial statements, now let's work on the financial ratios. So we are going to conduct financial ratio analysis to analyze and monitor the firm's performance and try to get an idea whether the firm is in a healthy financial situation or not. So who would like to do this ratio analysis? Who would like to get an idea of how the firm performed? So this would be the current perspective as shareholders, okay, investors who are interested in buying company stocks, and also creditors who are about to lend the company money, either in short term or in the long term. And also the management, they want to use these ratios to compare their past history and also other peer firms in the same industry. So when we do the ratio analysis, we can do a cross-sectional analysis. So we compare different firms' ratios at the same point of time. So basically, it's about a peer comparison. Or we can just compare to industry average or industry media. Another one is called benchmarking. So it's a type of a cross-sectional analysis, and we are going to use a key competitor or a group of competitors. So this is more targeted, more specific peers to compare with. And here is a comparison of companies. So you see you have a Dell, HP, these are in computer industry, Home Depot, Lowe's, and also different other industries. And here are the ratios. You have learned these ratios in your financial accounting class for sure. And these ratios are basically very different across different industries. So as you can see, the inventory turnover ratio is quite large for these computer companies and retail companies, but not very large for the building materials and merchandise stores. Another analysis is called a time series analysis. So you are using the past history for comparison, and you are comparing your current performance to your past performance, and you're gonna build a trend analysis to see whether your current status is beating the past or the past is beating the current. So here is a trend analysis based on a series of time, different years from 2012 to 2015. That's how the industry performs, is how your firm performs. So in terms of different ratios, here are a lot of ratios we're going to go over. You're gonna do the ratio analysis in the financial project of Excel, the first project, and also you're gonna do the ratio analysis in your first assignment. The ratio here, the first one is a current ratio, which is a current assets minus a current divided by current liabilities, and this measures the firm ability to meet short-term obligations. And this is also under the big category of liquidity ratios. And once again, liquidity ratios refers to the firm's ability to meet its short-term obligation, and the ability is measured by short-term assets, which include cash, of course, that's the most important assets, and also inventories and account receivables and marketable securities. These could be easily converted to cash within a very short time. So these are the firm's capacity of paying its debt. The current liabilities, of course, represent the firm's short-term obligations. All right. And the firm, of course, needs liquidity, just like a human needs blood in their bodies. A firm needs cash or liquidity to run its operations. Otherwise, the firm will not survive with the liquidity. Without liquidity, just like a human cannot survive without blood. So for a personal finance perspective, you can see there's also a calculation of liquidity ratios. The person just use their short-term assets divided by their short-term liabilities, and that basically indicates the family can only have a 10% their existing 1 year debt obligations with their current liquid assets. Another liquidity ratio here is quick ratio or acid test ratio covered in your accounting class. So in this ratio, there is an adjustment to the current ratio. You're subtracting inventory from current assets. While you know that the current assets should include inventory, if inventory is included, then that means only cash, account receivable, and marketable securities got left. So that's how you calculate a quick ratio based on the numbers on the financial statement. So I'm not gonna cover how you calculate this number. It's pretty easy as long as you can find the numbers in the right place of the financial statements. And also you're going to do the similar practice in the financial project and assignment. The reason it's called a quick ratio is that inventory is not quick, right? You have to spend much more time to convert inventory to cash other than cash itself or account receivables or marketable securities. So after you exclude there's no quick assets, so what's got left is quick assets. And here's some comparison of different ratios. One is a quick ratio and another is current ratio across different companies. One is Dell, one is Home Depot, and one is Lowe's. Okay, and you can see that Home Depot and Lowe's has a much lower quick ratio, whereas the current ratio is the same compared to Dell. Okay, you can see for current ratio, Dell is 1.3, and that's 1.3 applies to all of the three companies. But for quick ratio, Home Depot and Lowe's, which sells home building materials, they have much lower quick ratio. The reason is the inventory for these two companies hold is pretty large. As you can see from this quick ratios formula, when inventory gets large, you deduct a big number, the quick ratio will get smaller. So that's why these two companies have a quite low quick ratio, just because their inventory value is much bigger compared to Dell. And for Dell, many of their computers could just be directly sold to the customers from a factory. So upon the order of retail customers, Dell just ship the computers directly to them without going through warehouse, without putting the computers into inventory. So Dell has a much smaller inventory compared to Home Depot and Lowe's. So we have talked about the liquidity ratios, and we addressed current ratios and quick ratio. And quick ratio is also called asset test ratio. We also have a net working capital to measure liquidity. And net working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. And you know that this ratio or this factor is measured in dollar figure. If you compare net working capital of a big firm versus a net working capital of a smaller firm, then it's not really an apple to apple comparison, because for big firms, the net working capital could be in billions of dollars, and for small firms, the net working capital could be thousands of dollars. So what we can do is to develop this current ratio to factor out the magnitude of the size of assets. So to get a ratio and compare across different sizes of companies. So current ratio is a better analysis tool when we try to detect the firm's financial health. And we also have a cash ratio right here, which is cash divided by current liabilities. And again, cash is the most liquid assets and also current assets. So just a single out cash for this tool. And then we will discuss the long-term solvency ratio. For liquidity, it's really about short-term, how the firm's ability to meet the short-term obligations. But for long-term obligation, then we call it solvency ratio. So if the firm is unable to make its long-term obligation, then the firm is basically bankrupt. So the definition of bankruptcy is a firm unable to pay off its debt obligations. Even the firm is struggling to pay for its debt, still, if they do not have enough money, it will be under financial distress, and that would eventually lead to bankruptcy. The ratios we have here to measure long-term solvency ratios are time interest earned ratio, which is your operating profit divided by interest. And we know that we are going to deduct interest and then taxes from this EBIT, also called operating profit, and then we will have net income. So the EBIT stands for the money you have from your operations, which you will use to pay off interest. And then it's scaled by interest, measures how many times is your profit covers the interest payment. So definitely you want this ratio to be as high as possible. You also have another ratio called cash coverage ratio, which is just a little adjustment from the EBIT. You add depreciation to the EBIT. So the reason is when you get EBIT, it is after depreciation is deducted from sales. So depreciation is a non-cash term. And if you add depreciation back, so you basically cancel out the depreciation from your profit calculation. So EBIT plus depreciation will be sales minus all costs, which are cash, and then this will be a cash term on the top numerator. So when you have a cash term divided by interest, then you have a cash coverage ratio. It tells you how many times can your cash profit cover your interest, and of course you want this ratio to be a high number. After discussing the long-term solvency ratio, we also have this leverage ratio, which is also related with your debt. Before that, we had this interest, which is incurred based on the level of debt you have. And for the next category, we call it a leverage ratio. And it is basically address the amount of debt in accumulated level. So you have benefits of debt. So that basically could give higher shareholder return when the debt is higher. This is under a very big presumption that you are making positive operating profit. And then you also assume that the net profit margin and the asset efficiency is the same. So that's another precondition that would raise the shareholders' return. In terms of measuring debt, we have this total debt ratio, which is debt divided by total assets. And you know that total debt is a total assets minus total equity. And you also have this equity multiplier, which is total assets over total equity. We're going to use this equity multiplier in a later DuPont analysis. And so far, you just need to know that when debt increase, your equity multiplier would increase. If you play some algebra job, then this TA over TE would be expressed as 1 over 1 minus the debt ratio. So when the debt ratio increases, the denominator gets smaller and the whole value gets larger. So here is a exercise I want you guys to do. Consider along which of the following would increase a company's current ratio. So A, an increase in net fixed assets. Well, net fixed assets is about long-term assets. It has nothing to do with current assets or current liabilities. So A is not correct. B, an increase in accrued liabilities. And accrued liabilities is part of the current liabilities, and an increase of that would enlarge the denominator of the current ratio and not make the current ratio goes down. So B is incorrect. C, an increase in notes payable. For the same reason as B, it is incorrect because it's going to increase current liabilities and make current ratio smaller. D, an increase in account receivable. And this is a correct one because account receivable is a part of the current assets. When it goes up, current ratio would go up. E, we will exclude that for the same reason we exclude B and C. Here's another more difficult example. A company's current assets is $5 million, current liabilities is $10 million. Consider along which of the following actions would increase the company's current ratio. So A, borrow using short-term notes payable at $1 million and then use a cash to increase inventory. Well, this is first the thing you need to do here is to lay out the formula for current ratio, which is current assets over current liabilities. And you will see which of the activities would affect current assets as well as current liabilities, right? So the first action, as I mentioned earlier, when the firm used short-term notes payable to increase inventory. So what happens there is the short notes payable would increase because the firm has borrowed more money, and also inventory would increase. So what you see there is both current assets increased by 1 million, that's from inventory, and current liabilities increased by 1 million. So that's from short-term notes payable. And then your new current ratio is a 6 over 11. Okay, 5 plus 1 is 6, 10 plus 1 is 11. So your new current ratio is 6 over 11, which is greater than the old current ratio of 5 over 10, right? So A is a correct one. We will select that. For practice purpose, I'm also going over the other options. B, use $1 million cash to reduce accruals. So what happened here is when cash is spent, your current assets would decrease by 1 million. Okay, current assets covers cash, and then your current liabilities will also decrease by 1 million. So your new current ratio is 4 minus 1, which is 5 minus 1, which is 4, over 10 minus 1, which is 9, and that basically gets a larger number. 4 over 9 is greater than 5 over 10. C, you will exclude C and D for the same reason you'll exclude B, right? Because they basically apply the same change to current assets and current liabilities. So when cash is spent, current assets would drop by 1 million, and when these accounts payable or short-term notes payable are reduced, then your current liabilities would drop by 1 million. So your new current ratio would be 4 over 9. E, use $1 million cash to reduce long-term bonds outstanding. So your cash will be reduced, so it will go down to 4 million for current assets, and the long-term bonds will be reduced to 2. However, it has nothing to do with your current liabilities. So your new current ratio will be 4 million divided by 10 million, so that's going to be 0.4, which is lower than the previous 5 over 10. So we do not select E either. So another category of ratios is assets management ratio, and we also call them efficiency ratio. The first one I actually want you to see is the one down the bottom. It's called a total assets turnover ratio, which you use sales divided by total assets. The idea here is you want to generate as much sales as possible, right? A higher revenue is always good, and have your total assets limited. Well, this may be counterintuitive because you may think much more assets is better. You have more buildings, more cash, and more inventory. However, in terms of efficiency, more assets not always good because to maintain the building, to maintain the inventory, you have to pay rent, you have to pay utility bills, and hire people and pay wages. So maintain total assets, high level total assets requires high cost. Therefore, you don't want this number to go very high. The most ideal situation is you have a lot of sales here, but have a very little assets. Think about a taxi driver. You just have a car that is worth $5,000, but you drive and make money from taxi fares and make $100,000 each year. So that's a very high asset turnover ratio or a high efficiency of running business. And if you read above, you will have this inventory turnover ratio, which is sales over inventory. And you would know that inventory is about your products, and you're going to sell those products to the market. And let's say if in the entire year you have $100 sales and your inventory is $50, then your inventory turnover would be 2. Or in another case, let's say for the whole year you only maintain one car, okay, just one automobile for your inventory, and then you make sales of 2 cars, right? And then so the story is you sell the first car, and then your inventory get empty, then you immediately fill it with another car, and then you sell this other car immediately during the whole year. So your sales is two cars, and your inventory is always one car. No matter which car you put in your inventory is always one. So then your inventory turnover is two, so to speak. The inventory turnover gives you the idea of how many times is your inventory got replaced by sales. And the inventory turnover ratio could also be expressed as cost goods sold over inventory. Although it's not put here, but inventory turnover can also be expressed as cost goods sold over inventory. Another turnover ratio here is a receivable turnover, all right, which is sales divided by accounts receivable. So let's say during the whole year, you have accounts receivable of $10 always. So that means people always owe you $10 no matter at what time of the year. And your sale is $20. So it's like you need to collect the $10 bill, and then you make new sales, and then you have another $10 bill to collect, and then when you make two sales, you collect your account receivable twice. So the sales is 20, account receivable is 10. So that basically means during the whole year, your account receivable get incurred and then collected, and then incurred and collected twice. So it tells you how many times is your account receivable get collected during the whole year. And then you have this day sales inventory ratio, basically use the number of days in a year divided by inventory turnover. If a turnover is 2, if during the whole year your inventory got replaced twice, so that means on average it's going to take 182 days for your inventory to get replaced. Likewise, you have this day sales outstanding ratio, also called average collection period, which is also the number of days in a year divided by the turnover. So this tells you how long does it take to collect your account receivable into cash for once. And here are some other practice I want you guys to do. Which of the following would generally indicate an improvement of company's financial position, holding other things constant? First, the time interest earned ratio declines. So time interest earned ratio is EBIT over interest. When it goes down, it's not good. That means either you have a low operating profit or have a high interest to pay, or both. B, day sales outstanding ratio increases. So this means it's going to take longer days to collect your account receivable. Well, the ideal situation is to get paid in cash right away, and we don't want to wait to collect the cash in a later stage or wait too many days. So when this day sales outstanding ratio increases, that means we have to wait longer to get paid in cash. So that's not good. C, quick ratio increases. So that means you have more quick assets in comparison to current liabilities. So you're more able to pay your short-term obligations. So that's good. D, current ratio declines. So that's bad. E, total asset turnover decreases. And total assets turnover is an indicator of efficiency. When this go down, that's not good. So we would select C. Another ratio category is called profitability ratios. So basically, this measures the firm's profit generating ability. You have this net profit margin, which is a net income divided by sales. All right, net income is also called net profit, and we want this number to be as high as possible because making good sales is not good enough. You also need to have a low cost, and at the end of the day, you should have a high net income. You also have this gross profit margin, which is a sales minus the cost goods sold. So this gross profit margin could be measured at both company level for the whole year or at the per unit level. Let's say if you're selling hamburger, you have a $1 sale for one hamburger and the cost is 40 cents, and then your gross profit margin would be $1 minus 40 cents divided by $1. That's a 60%. And this 60% applies to just one burger, one unit of your product. It also applies to the entire company. So if you have 1,000 hamburgers, so you still have the same gross profit margin. But for the net profit, you will need to deduct cost of goods sold. Not only that, but also depreciation, fixed expenses, selling, general administrative expenses, interest, and taxes, which occurs at a company level. So net profit margin cannot be used to measure uh, the profitability per one unit. Then you have this return on assets, that is net profit divided by total assets. Again, you want this ratio to be high. You want to have a lot of profit with limited assets to manage. And for shareholders, they care more about return on equity because net income is how much money the shareholders make. The net income is after taxes paid, after interest is paid, so the net income only go to the shareholders' pocket. And also, the shareholders' investment in the company is in the total equity, not in liabilities, not in total assets, but total equity only. So the shareholders is more concerned with the return on equity than return on assets. You also have this ratio called a market value ratio, and the market value ratio is derived from the stock prices in the exchange floor. So the stock prices would change from second to second. It's not stable, but for the book value or the total equity, it is released every quarter or every year. That is more stable. So to get the market value, it is also called market capitalization. You need to use the stock price per share times number of shares outstanding. And for book value, you just need to use common equity on the financial statements. And the market value per share basically is a stock price. For example, Microsoft is sold at $40 per share. Amazon is sold at $200 per share. So something like that. And for book value per share, you're going to use a common equity, which is a lump sum on the financial statements divided by shares outstanding. So to get the book value at per share level. You also have this earning per share, which measures the earning perspective. You got to use net income divided by shares outstanding. And of course, net income goes to stockholders. Price to earnings ratio is the stock price over earnings per share. And price earning ratio will fall into a certain reasonable range, usually between 20 to 30. So if a price earning ratio is high, that means the stock price is too high, but the earning is too low. For shareholders, you don't want to pay very high price for very little earning the stock makes for you. Okay, so if the stock has a high PE ratio or price earning ratio, then people would like to sell such stock to take advantage of a high price, right? So after selling, then the PE ratio would drop because the price would drop from selling. If the PE ratio is too low, that basically means the stock is generating a lot of earnings for the shareholder, but the price is pretty low. So that is a very good opportunity to invest. So people would buy the stock at a lower price and then enjoy the high earnings generated by the stock. As a result, the price of the stock would increase and then the PE ratio would increase. So the bottom line is if the PE ratio gets too high, it will drop because people will sell this stock. If PE ratio gets too low, it will increase because people will buy the stock. So the PE ratio always falls into a normal range. We then have this ratio called a market to book ratio, that is a stock price over book value per share. So the stock price represents the market value and book value per share is from the financial statement. So you can get the market book ratio at per share level. You can also get market book ratio at a company level. So for the total market value, you're going to use a stock price times shares outstanding to get the market capitalization for the entire firm. And for the book value, it is just the total equity from the financial statements. All right, here is an example we can do together. So we have a company E and a company P. They have the same PE ratio, they have the same earning per share ratio, and the company E has higher price. So which of the following is correct? A, company E is probably judged by investor to be riskier. Well, we cannot make this conclusion based on the information provided here. Because riskier stock, usually give a riskier, give higher return. So we don't have that kind of information. B, company E must have a higher market to book ratio. So we can't make this conclusion because we don't have the book value information. We don't have a total equity. We don't have anything from the financial statements. C, company E must pay a lower dividend, and we cannot make this conclusion either because we don't have information about dividends here. D, company E trades at higher PE ratio. So this is the correct one because the earning per share is the same, but price is high for E. So if you use a price divided by earning per share, you're gonna get a PE ratio or price earning ratio. So D is a correct one.